I'm sorry, Andrew Weissman, but if I recall correctly, in 2018, you were one of the people who helped write the Mueller report, and you all botched the hell out of that.
And never in my wildest dreams would I have thought we would be here. I thought we were better as a country.
Oh, yeah.
Like all these sites that have been around for creating videos and all that, like text stock videos, they're done.
But that's why Canva was one of the first to get.
What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show, the home of Epic Conversations, and I'm the host of Epic Conversations. 2018 Innovation Award winner given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. 2020 Best Podcast News Award winner given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. I also co-host and co-produce the only online show in the world for dads and fathers. It's sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. And being part of that team, we have reached out directly and indirectly to over 400,000 dads, fathers, and male caregivers around the world. And as always, I like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. We're broadcasting on November 2nd, but I'm never the star. I don't want to be the star because Prince said he said to these ladies, baby, you're the stars. What is up?
Oh, man, we're down to the final countdown. What is it? The final countdown.
Who sung that final? This is the final. Who sung that song?
I don't know. I don't remember who did that one.
Okay, well, I'm going to look that up while you ladies are settling in. What's been going on? What up? What up?
Oh, Aisha, you're muted.
Oh, gosh.
Sorry, nothing. I'm just ready for this to, I think I'm ready for it to come to a conclusion here.
Okay.
Yeah. We talked about that on Girlfriends Chat this weekend. Pretty exhausted.
Okay.
Yeah, we did. I think that we just, I think that it's time. We're ready. I think because there's another part to this, right? So there's the part that happens and starts November 6th. So if we should also plug that we're doing an election night results returns.
Why are you stealing all my thunder?
I'm saying that even after
people are going to click off now after like 2 minutes and 52 seconds.
So we don't know how long that show's going to. So we don't even know how long that show's going to go, right? It's going to go till we get tired enough. Right? But
okay.
We still might not get those results then. So November 6th is when the real things. I have Prince fans who we connect on Twitter, and one of them was saying to me that they're kind of afraid for our country because, on one hand, if he wins, they're afraid for us. And if he loses, they're afraid for us because he said he's overseas. He said he's never seen the U.S. this close to being on the brink of a civil war. Yes. And the real concern at this point isn't the election now. It moves to after November 5th, we move to
time because you'll take away 3 of our conversation topics in 1 minute. So let's stop. Let's get to this. All right. Primetime Saturday with Aisha and Lala at Patreon, aka Girlfriends Chat. I'm going to change that. Girlfriends Chat. That's proper to change that. Then the store, there's the link. And on most platforms you're watching this, it'll be in the comments. Also, join the Discord group. I think that's going to be a very interesting Discord group this week. It always is. Subscribe to the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube and hit the notification button. Also, like the Dr. Vibe Show on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. To advertise your business, product, or service on any of the platforms I'm a part of, please email me dr.vibe at the vibeshow.com. And also, we never forget that lady named Dr. Tachi from Fort Lauderdale, who runs and powers Indie Soup Media that has over 40 independent content creators and has now over 20,000 YouTube subscribers in about 7 or 8 months. And we are happy to be part of that platform. We haven't done a lot of international stuff lately. No. But Lala brought an interesting story. There are riots been going on in Lisbon, Portugal. What's going on?
Yeah, I thought this was really important to bring to the attention of the world, because it's not just America that sees division when it comes to racial issues. We live in it, we sit in it, we know what goes on in our country, but we also must be aware of what's going on in other countries as well. So at the end of October, there was a shooting of a 43-year-old Black man. His name was Odair Monez. And it was in a suburb of Lisbon. And it happened on the 21st. And so it says that, and there's still not a lot of clarity around this story. But they say that he was fleeing police and then subsequently shot after going after the police with some kind of weapon. That actually has been debated back and forth, including the officer who actually was the one who did the shooting on this. Because at some point he did come out and say that no, he didn't have a weapon. And then others said, yes, he did. So it sparked a lot of outrage, and it led to some pretty violent clashes and protests. There were buses and cars set on fire. And here in Portugal, there's not a two-party system. There is a party called Chinga, and they are total authoritarian. They like to make sure they want to give police complete authority. And in fact, these areas where most of these immigrants are brought over to, you tend to live where you're comfortable. So there's pockets of cultures, just like anywhere else in America. And especially you see it in Los Angeles. But what the police have been granted in those areas is more police power. They are manned more, and they have been given the ultimate rule of authority there. So the people rose up and they are demanding that this officer be charged with murder. And this has actually spread to more than one part of the Lisbon area. There are many pockets that started to see all of these protests, and so much so that the president of Portugal came out and was very upset and was really begging people to stop these riots. This is not, he says this is not normal for Portugal. And historically, in these times, of course, we know the history of Portugal was built on the slave trade, but it tends to be more peaceful. So when these things happen, the full government gets really upset, unlike you see what we have in America. So they have calmed down with the protests, but there is still a demand for true answers, and we don't have those answers yet. So just know that there's not just civil unrest in our country. It is a worldwide situation, and we all must be able to understand other countries to understand what's going on in our own. And there comes a point where we have to give compassion to other areas and other people who are going through it in other countries. And I just am grateful that because as a little girl, I always wanted to travel. I always wanted to be I wanted to travel and sing. I am realizing those dreams now, but it also has opened up my eyes to other cultures and what they go through. Just when we went to Morocco this past year and we sang in Morocco, we were there during Ramadan, and you had to put your American away because the time that they fast, everybody fasts. And that means you too, if you don't celebrate it. So you must respect what's going on in other countries, but you also must be very aware that the same issues that we are facing in America are also being faced in other parts of the world.
Mm.
Well said. Anything you want to add, Aisha?
No, I just when Lala had told me this story when we were doing girlfriends chat, well, before we did the girlfriends chat, I told her that we need to talk about this. And I think it goes back to what she was saying about how, this is why other people are watching, other countries are watching this election with our country, right?
Mhm.
Because see, what's going on in Lisbon right now, how they're going to handle that is what they learned from 2020 here. It's what they learned from the 1960s. It's what they learned from the Rodney King riots that we mentioned earlier. It's those kinds of things. It's what they learned from Ferguson and all these things, right? So that is why we have to be very, you know, I don't think people realize why other countries are looking towards us. You got to remember, some of these countries, particularly these European countries, aren't as diverse
Mhm.
as our country, right? You do have pockets of people going from the Caribbean and from the continent of Africa to Europe, and of course, England had its own. England and in Europe had their own version of chattel slavery, right? But um, the the ways in which people of color in those countries have not integrated into the political sphere, um, there is this, well, how do we deal with these things because we don't have the people here to help us, to deal with them. Oh, well, we'll look at a country that does. And
Right.
so we have to keep in mind that this is why, we wonder, well, why does so and so care about, what's going on? This is why, because they look to us for that. But not only that, but if we're falling apart, Ukraine is watching us, because if our country falls apart,
Oh, yeah.
they don't need one of their allies to be falling apart
Right.
and having to deal with their own stuff, right?
It's all tied together. It's all tied
Yes.
together. And what was very interesting, I'm sorry to interrupt
No,
you,
it's
Aisha.
fine.
What was very interesting is, as I was following these news stories so closely and watching on social media, because once again, we all have the power of reporting on our own phones, right? So I was looking at a lot of things on TikTok and looking at a lot of things on Instagram Reels and seeing real people reporting, and some of the comments echo exactly the same thing that we are hearing in America is these immigrants,
Mhm.
these these people from Africa, these people. And I was, and I had to take a breath, because you like to think, and you hear people say, if Harris wins or if Trump wins, or we're going to move out of the country. You
Mm,
need to understand what that means. And don't you understand that when you do that, you are also now an immigrant in the country that you choose to go to?
correct.
So you need to be very careful about the things you say and the things that you do and how you think you're going to take your American to another country. Because one thing that's not being talked about is Mexico is deporting people left and right back to America because they are ruining their economy.
Yeah.
So you
And,
can't just pick up and take your American everywhere.
yeah. And I mean, think about it this way. How would we feel, especially, no, forget those of us, not just those of us in the lower 48, right? Think about Alaska. How would we feel if this was happening in Canada right above us?
Right.
Do you know how we would freak out if Canadians were that close, like 2, 3 days close to possibly electing a man who said he's going to be a dictator on day one?
Yeah.
Guess what dictators do? They invade other countries,
Yes,
and
they
they
do.
start with those countries that are to the north of them, to the south of them, to the east, and to the west before they even try and go to another continent. Okay. And to the north of us is Canada. So how would we feel? Well, to the north of us is Canada, but to the south of Canada is America. So if they had somebody who was going to be a dictator, where's the first place they're going to go? They're going to go south,
Mhm.
right? And
Which we
so,
clearly see in Russia.
right,
Russia,
exactly.
it's the same strategy. But what people don't understand is, y'all forget about that little Bering Strait that goes
Right,
straight to America that is attached to Russia.
right, right. And think about it this way. Um, Russia is doing to Ukraine and some of these other countries what we don't want Canada to do, what we wouldn't want Canada to do to us if they were going to elect their version of a Trump. It's what we wouldn't want Mexico to do to us if they were going to elect their version of a Trump. It's what we should fear if Venezuela doesn't get their stuff together, because guess what? They don't have to go through Mexico. There is that little, they don't have to go through Mexico. There is that little thing called the Gulf of Mexico that they can just hop on a ship. Okay? So, and like Laura said, there's that little strait there between Alaska and Russia. To her credit, it was stupid to say that she could see Russia from her house. The distance is just too far. But literally,
Yeah,
Russia is close to Alaska. Okay, so you know, I can't implore on people enough that what we're seeing going on in Lisbon is no different than things that happened here. But we should also be mindful of the fact that this isn't just an us issue.
yes.
This is happening more and more across the globe, and
in Europe too.
In Europe too, yep. And how and even though we are a country, we're like one of these first countries that is on the brink of electing a dictator on this side of the sphere that would control
The side
right.
of
Right, because the other side of the sphere, they have Xi, they have Putin, right?
Yeah.
They have Viktor Orban. On this side, the guy, remember the president of Venezuela, he left the country, and I guess we don't even know where he is right now, right? So then there would just be this Trump guy. Not only is he evil, he's stupid, and he's falling apart, but he instituted a child separation policy.
Yeah.
Where 1,000 children still have not been reunited. We can't forget that kind of evil.
That's right.
And guess when the last, what was the last time America did that on a mass scale? During slavery.
Mm-hmm.
Separating and selling children. I guarantee you that some of those babies that were separated, those new infants, were sold.
Yes.
All right, just going to catch up and see, Lala, you dropped this subject and it's taken a life of its own here. So what I'm going to do is read some comments. Regina says, I witnessed a lot of racism in the Netherlands towards Syrian immigrants when traveling there. It was really bad. Dr. Tachi says, I think there is a perception that Europe and Europeans are on the whole are different. They were progenitors of slavery, progenitors of slavery and colonization. They are, and absolutely. Regina says, I lived in Europe in the 1960s and saw the families of my friends from South America, Africa, and Asia discriminated against by Swiss realtors. Super racist. Dr. Chachi too, Regina says, not surprised, the Dutch historically were brutal colonizers. Regina says, 100%, I was only there 2 weeks and encountered at least 4 racist interactions between the Dutch and the Arabs. Dr. Tati says, exactly, which is why Canadians and Mexicans should take heed. It is not okay if he wins.
Mm-hmm.
We said a long while back, we should build a wall between Canada and America. That's a whole other conversation. Regina says, Dr. Tachi, how is Harris doing in Florida? Dr. Tachi says, from what I can see, there's wide support for Harris. However, there's a extreme faction here, and many Hispanics are conservative.
Right.
And okay, Michelle says, okay, I'm back from church service. Did you pray for your country? I just want to ask.
Well, let me tell you something though. Here's the thing. Dr. Chachi did say, many Latinos here are conservative, but here's the thing, and this is why Pennsylvania is so interesting, is that this area around Philadelphia, they've got between 500,000 to 600,000 Puerto Ricans, right? That's why he's been in Pennsylvania. So he's got that. But guess what else? In all these swing states, they've got concentrations of not just of the Latino population, of Puerto Ricans specifically. And the Puerto Ricans are pissed. They are. of all, I'm tired of having to remind people on Twitter that Puerto Ricans are American citizens. Hello. They might not pay income tax, but they pay into Medicare, they pay into Social Security, they pay into what else is it? All those Medicare, Social Security, and there's something else that they pay. Oh, workman's comp and unemployment, right? So we're not giving them anything. Talk about taxation without representation. And they do have a representative in in the House.
Okay.
But still, look, Puerto Rico is to our country just like what is DC.
Okay. So
Neither one has the kind of representatives that like DC doesn't have a senator.
So Dr. Chachi says they are livid. Are you saying the Puerto Ricans?
Mm-hmm.
So Michelle says they only remember Puerto Rico during election years.
Oh, let me tell you this. Right. I live in Connecticut. So we have a big Puerto Rican population. And Joy Reid kept mentioning the tri-state area of New York, Connecticut, and New Jersey. And that, let me tell you something. The radio up here, 'cause I've been flipping to it when I've been in my car and listening to the English language, his Latino networks on Sirius XM, and their talk radio. This is all they're talking about. And I've read about people who are Puerto Rican and went and voted for Trump, going back and saying, I need to take my vote back. I made a mistake, and realizing that that's not how it works. So I was telling Lala about how this one guy that happened to, after he early voted, this happened with Trump. And then what he ended up doing was volunteering for Harris. And he's taking people, he's like, yeah, my one vote might go there, but I'm gonna make sure that there's 20 more votes that go to her. So he's been taking Puerto Ricans to the polls to early vote and vote for Harris. And a lot are doing that who early voted for Trump. And look, that's why he can't get. He's so upset that he can't get rid of the stain of that. That is really upsetting him because he thought he had Latinos on lock.
Lala, anything you want to add?
I voted in Florida, so my little vote went to Harris. And it's been counted.
Okay.
I laugh when I drive around here and I see people with Trump dance signs on their yard, and they also have a sign that says, "Please be kind." I'm like, that's your candidate.
All right. Regina says, I just looked it up. 68% of Florida's 2 million Cubans are said to be pro-Trump. Dr. Chachi says, yet there are Barica Puerto Ricans who will still vote for him.
Yeah.
And then Dr. Chachi says, but that same energy should have been there before they denigrated Puerto Ricans.
Yeah.
Right.
All right.
But I guess, you know what? Better late than never.
Yeah. And I think we have to remind people that Latinos are not a monolith, even though people think they are. Mexicans are not Puerto Ricans. So the issues that are important to Puerto Ricans are not necessarily the issues that are important to Mexicans. For example, Puerto Ricans, immigration is not one of their issues. They're citizens, right? Immigration is not one of the, but white people tend to think that, oh, it's an issue for all Latinos. Well, why would it be an issue for people who are actual citizens, right? It's just, Cubans are not Mexican, nor are they Puerto Rican. They have totally different issues. So, and then there's Dominican Republic, and then of course all the South American things. So I think that people, in thinking that, the Latino community, no, guess what? The Puerto Rican community is going to think differently than other factions.
All right. And Dr. Tachi agrees with you, Aisha, saying very true. All right. Well, we haven't done this for a while, so we're going to end off this conversation. Haven't done it for a long, long time. So if anyone's up to it, ask Aisha and Lala anything. We haven't done this for a while, so we're going to pull it out. And I got a question for both of you ladies.
Mm-hmm.
well, I could end with this. I'm going to end with this. Okay, here's a last show. I talked to you about, is there a divide between, is this election causing a divide between men and women? So this week, unfortunately, I couldn't see the story on the NPR, but I did hear it on Morning Edition. They had former Republican pollster Frank Luntz on, and he's distanced himself from MAGA. but interesting poll, or he did I guess a focus group with a group of men. Now they did not get down to the nationality of men, but they basically, almost every one of the men said they weren't going to vote for Harris. And one of the reasons, many of them said that they would have voted for Hillary Clinton, they would have voted for Michelle Obama, which makes me think that the reason why they're not voting for Kamala Harris is that they didn't have a man in their life who was a political, who had a history in politics, which I found very, very interesting.
Wait, say it again?
No, so many of the men said they wouldn't vote for, they said they would have voted for Hillary Clinton. I think they may have voted for Hillary Clinton in the past. They would have voted for Michelle Obama if she had run, but they wouldn't vote for Kamala Harris. And some of them said, well, she doesn't have enough experience. And I sort of read between the lines saying, oh, because Hillary Clinton and Michelle Obama had husbands who were presidents, they would have voted for her, but they're not voting for Kamala Harris because she doesn't have enough experience, or basically one of them said, hey, she doesn't got, she's not going to make a good enough leader because she doesn't, her husband this and this and that.
There's also something else that Hillary Clinton and Michelle Obama have in common that I think is even above this, to how men are viewing women in this position. That it is different with Kamala, is that they have both have given birth to children, right? Because remember this whole thing, who is on that ticket talking about women who give birth? JD Vance. So there's that part, because I guarantee you, if they dug deeper and asked these men what they think, women's lives are and what they should do.
It did. Yeah, there was a lot.
I think that would definitely come up.
I'd like to say, well, what's a woman's role in society, in their opinion?
Right.
But it didn't go there. We do have questions for you. First of all, Regina says, okay, do you both think the Netflix documentary on Prince should be released as is?
Yes. Because some of the things that people are quote unquote concerned about, I already knew about. And I actually probably know more than is in the documentary. Actually, I know for a fact on certain situations, I do know more than what made it into the documentary. And I think that the thoughts that people have about some of these things, or one thing in particular, check yourself.
I think it needs to be released now. I think that the fact that they're holding it back is it says a lot. The reason to me that it was held back is because they feel like if it's released with the truths, that people can't handle the truths, and they don't want any blemishes on their product now, because now Prince become their commodity.
Right.
And they don't want to hurt anything that has to do with funds that are coming to them. Me personally, as hard as it is for me to hear some of these stories coming out, the thing that hurts me a lot is how he treated his other groups, like how the family couldn't keep their name, how the Time couldn't keep their name. And that was their livelihood. That was not a pretty part of what Prince did. Although he also did a lot of good, but what it shows is that he's human, and we all are, whether we like it or not. I think it's ridiculous that it's being held back. I think that it would do the world some good to actually hear some truths.
Who is holding it back?
The estate.
The estate. And two more things on this, and these will be the last two things I say on it. One thing that's funny is that you end up finding out later, or depending on who you know, that even though Prince was out there fighting to get out of his contract, he was keeping people in contracts, right? For like a decade or more. And that's the sad part, right? It doesn't, in my opinion, knowing these things doesn't take away from who he is as an artist. What I think is that people struggle with how they feel about him, and that perhaps this might change that. And I think for me, I guess the first time I heard these things wasn't when I read this article that people are, about this thing. I've heard these things years ago, right? And the first time I heard them was kind of like, oh God, it was a gut punch. But then I had to ask myself, why was it a gut punch? You should, what celebrities and people that you admire and love can be horrible people at times. Guess what? We all can be horrible and mean and nasty to people sometimes. We all have that. It doesn't take away from people's talents or the impact that they have. And the last thing I'll say on this is the estate is holding this up. I advise people to go and investigate, read, study up on what happened with the Jackson estate, and understand that one of the people who owns the Prince estate was the attorney for Catherine Jackson and the children at one time, and lost their case against the people that controlled Michael Jackson's estate. And I think the thing that was learned from that is how you make money off of one of those estates if you own it and the family does not. And the lesson to be learned is that sold part of it for $1 billion a couple of years ago. Earlier this year, sold another part for almost $2 billion. And there's one more other part that they're looking to sell in some form or fashion and the offer is no less than $1 billion. And the thing of it is guess what? People keep saying, oh, we want a Prince bands. Oh, when's this box set coming out? No, it's not happening. They're not going to do it, because if they do that and saturate the market with these products, the value to sell it goes down. The ultimate goal is to get this up to the $1 billion to $2 billion that the Jackson estate was worth, and to sell it. Period.
And let's not forget, you have to really be paying attention to what's going on in the music world. Justin Bieber sold his catalog with the understanding that anything that he creates now moving forward, he still will get paid on. But he sold it for what was like almost the largest amount. So there goes to show you that these catalogs are important. And so what happens with that? You have to remember, when people like Sony and Warner Brothers buy these catalogs, they no longer have to pay anyone. It now belongs to them. So once that is sold and there's nothing else coming to that person, all of the money and all the license can go anywhere they want it to go.
Yeah. And also to keep this in mind, right? What you just said about Sony. Sony just bought Queen's catalog. And one of the clauses in that contract that sticks out and should stick out to everyone, and I saw this on a TikTok video too, is the clause that allows Sony to be able to use, remember, because Sony also makes movies, they also make TV shows. They get to use all of Queen's catalog without having to pay.
That's a strike right there. Right. Good stuff. All right, next. So Jen says, Aisha, 100 to what you were saying a few moments ago. So then Regina has a follow-up question. So what happens to Paisley Park if they sell the catalog?
They sell it to Universal. Doesn't Universal make theme parks?
Yes.
Universal already does the publishing for Prince's music. They just sell it to Universal. Universal takes it and probably leaves it as it is, but they market it as a Prince theme park or museum, or like
Okay.
they do with Universal Studios and all that stuff.
So
And
Dr.
then Universal, what? Oh, you can record in Prince's studio. You can record in Prince's studio. You can like they have right now with the oh, you can Airbnb the Purple Rain house, and well, guess what? You can Airbnb and sleep in the room that Prince died in. That's just gonna happen.
All right. Dr. Tachi says, great take that you gave just a few moments ago, Aisha. Another question for Aisha again. Dr. Tachi says, Lala is already doing some stuff in Portugal. Aisha, would you consider residing in another country?
Yeah. But look, I'm so attached to my family and being near my family, and like, but you know what though, I could probably, if I did, I actually wanted to go to Canada because it's another country, right? Different way of living, but I wouldn't be so far that I couldn't go visit my family. Because what is it, 8 hours from Connecticut?
Okay.
That's a drive.
Yeah, exactly.
We take you.
Hey, listen, I go from Florida to Kentucky all the time. That's longer than that drive from Florida to Kentucky.
I got
my sisters go to Toronto all the time.
Okay.
So and they love it there.
Okay. Question from me. Has this election caused any heated conversations in your families at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, but some confusion.
Want to elaborate?
Because I'm going to be careful of my words on this one. Because it took on the role of women's bodies, and they feel like this whole election that Democrats are only running on abortion, and they are firmly against that. And so they have decided not to vote, and I don't agree with that.
Yeah, my father is in the South, and I have family there. The ones that vote, no, I don't know. On my mother's side of family, we always talk about politics. Thanksgiving's coming up, we're going to be talking about politics then, right? My grandfather is a registered Republican because he was a city councilman. And I asked my grandfather this years ago because he was in that seat in the 90s. And I asked him, like, because my grandfather is a fiscal conservative, but liberal on certain, like more liberal on some of these policies, because I've gone back and I've read the city council minutes where he was the chair there, right? And one of the things he told me was that, being Black in this part of the state, in this city council, I never would have gotten elected.
Wow.
But then when you got elected, and I read this, for example, they wanted to cut, this is years ago, they wanted to cut funding to the schools, but give a raise to the superintendent.
Well, ain't that the way that it goes all over the world right now?
And my grandfather, being the Republican, was like, why would we do that?
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand I don't understand what he did to get a raise that we have to take it from the kids.
Right.
Okay. So Dr. Tachi says it was common for older Black people to be Republicans, quote, the party of Lincoln, unquote. Michelle says if she had to go somewhere, she'd be going to Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
Now, and Lala, so just building on what you said, coming back to what I said at the beginning of this segment about that poll that Frank Luntz had, he said that one of the things that a lot of these men were saying is that they felt the Democratic Party was anti-man. They're pushing women and just forgetting about men, and this is why these men are going to be voting, I think, who may be formerly Democratic leaning now to 45, because 45 is strong. He's strong, and he's, you know,
Oh, so strong
Yeah,
that he
no,
whipped women, right? I can't say the
thing.
word because YouTube will get us, but oh, so strong.
But there's that, remember that saying, when you're used to privilege, equality feels like oppression. That is what this is. Here is the thing. If men were dying from Viagra, this would not be a question of why it be a focus, right? Women are dying from things that we shouldn't be dying from, period. That's the first thing. But beyond that, when have we not prioritized men's issues in any election? You know, you can't have it both ways. You can't say that men are head of the household and then we have all these economic policies to benefit men and people who are head of the household, and then turn around and cry that, oh, we're focusing on women's issues. Well, you know why we're focusing on it? Because women actually lost a right. That is the point. Men have lost
Already started
no
losing lives.
right, and men have lost no rights. That is why there is that focus. And to be perfectly honest, let me tell you something. Lala and I had children before Roe was overturned. Okay, so we have this conversation on Girlfriend's Chat because we were talking about what a pregnancy, what you go through in a pregnancy. Let me tell you something. I had group B strep after I delivered my daughter, and they had to remove some extra tissue, right? That got left behind from my cesarean because I started going into labor before the cesarean. And if they hadn't done that, that infection that I got could have been worse because I already had preeclampsia. So imagine they just knew to do that. That's what they did. They didn't have to sit and think about it. They didn't have to call lawyers, call the call the Department of Justice to find out. They just did it. But now someone else, group B strep is common. Okay, you get a test for it in pregnancy, so you know beforehand if you have it. But now doctors will not make that decision as to whether they need to treat or not. They have to go and talk to the hospital lawyer.
Yeah.
Like there's another story that came out this week about a young girl last year, 18, just graduated high school, pregnant, went to 3 different hospitals while she was miscarrying. While she's miscarrying, 3 different hospitals, and they all turned her down and she died. So this is why we're focusing on women's healthcare. And you know what? I'm sorry. Kamala did a whole plan for Black men. What more do you want?
Let me catch up with some comments. So Michelle says, Dr. Tachi, that's exactly what I was thinking. My maternal grandparents were Republicans too. Dr. Tachi says, yeah, Michelle Hayward. Oh, wow. Michelle says, men are used to being centered. They have not been centered. It's the same with whiteness. She also says, Dr. Tachi, my maternal grandfather did more civil rights than many in this country during his time. Also says, wow, Dr. Tachi says, wow, Michelle, it feels like back then civil rights was a civic duty for many of us.
And that's the bothering point about now and young people is that they don't feel like civil rights and voting being a civil right as a civic duty. People don't see voting as a civic duty. When I go to vote, I feel like, look, I'm about to do this work. That's how I look at voting. I'm about to put in this work because it's my duty.
Okay.
It's how I pay for my citizenship, right?
Dr. Chachi says, I'm sorry, but the way of thinking that one will get less if others have equality is juvenile, shows a lack of emotional intelligence, and frankly is rooted in probably in stupidity, I think Dr. Chachi is saying. Regina says, yep, I'm not too thrilled with dopey male privilege. All right. And another question here. God, Michelle says, has this election caused arguments in your friend groups? Okay.
No, all my friends are on the same page.
Yes, for me.
Okay.
Yes, for me.
Oh.
Yes, for me, because I do have a lot of friends that are realtors. And what I have seen in my circles has really opened my eyes to who is around me. I have really seen some pretty nasty stuff in these realtor groups of people who I used to look up to. And I have a different perspective of them now. And I, everybody has a right to their opinion. But when your opinion oppresses others, I have a problem with it.
I'm going to close out. I'm going to ask you a final question, but I found something about Frank Luntz. And so I'm going to get down to this article. Let me just show it first. So I'm going to bring this up. Okay, and then I'm going to scroll down to the key reading of it. So the title of the article is, okay, so we have Republican, he was pathetic and he could still win. Republican strategist, surprising insights on 45 versus Harris. Frank Luntz has changed his mind, has changed during the election cycle when he initially thought Harris was a sure winner. Now he's confused about why 45's extreme rhetoric isn't having the same effect it had before. So I'm going to
I saw him on TV explaining this, and he was struggling to explain it.
Okay, but I'm going to get down to the two parts here, and I'm going to read them. Then I'm going to ask you a final question, both of you. Going to read them saying why he feels Harris might not win. When Joe Biden announced he was withdrawing from the presidential race and throwing his support behind Harris, the Democratic Party rapidly consolidated behind the vice president. Her sudden candidacy brought forth a wave of enthusiasm like nothing Luntz had ever seen in his decades of political work. He described her opening weeks at the top of the ticket as, quote, a genuine freight train, unquote. That, quote, took the country by storm, unquote, and was, quote, the best political campaign in modern American history, even better than Barack Obama, quote unquote, over that 45-day period. But Luntz says Harris has been comparatively, quote, abysmal, unquote, over the last month because of her outright refusal to separate herself from Biden and his policy choices. Quote, you've got to give voters a second act. You have to give them a second reason to listen. And in her case, she's not telling them what they want to know or need to know, unquote, he said. Quote, she has a responsibility to answer specific questions about what she would do, and voters are not happy, unquote. He also noted that after nearly a decade running almost continuous campaign for the presidency, voters may have become inured to 45's increasingly extreme rhetoric, but he isn't sure why none of it is breaking through, considering how bizarre the ex-president's remarks have been in recent weeks. Quote, what I don't understand is that he's saying stuff that is absolutely extreme and it's not hurting him at all. He is not just annoying or offensive. Now he's saying stuff that we have to get the constitutionality of it. This is not the same stuff that he said when he was president. This is at a different level, unquote, he said. But then he compares why Harris might win. But Luntz added there's a bright spot for Harris in the public polling data, even though he does not trust polling now in the slightest. And that's the incredible gender gap in the American electorate. He cited the recent survey in which Harris's female support at 57% to 45's 39%, while 45's male support is 56% to Harris's 39%.
Okay.
That gender gap, one said, there will be, quote, a lot of couples where one member is sleeping on the couch on the election night, not because they're watching TV, unquote. He says, quote, this is real and this is huge, unquote, because women turn up to vote more than men. The gender gap could prove a decisive advantage for Harris. But Luntz still describes the contest as a, quote, dead heat, unquote, unless the vice president pulls further ahead with women. Luntz also warned that younger voters, traditionally unreliable demographic, could make all the difference if they turn out, because Harris and Democrats have, quote, an absolutely positive advantage among any voter under the age 40, and even more so under the age of 30. But for Harris to really pull ahead, hold on a second, because I'm getting some echoing here. Okay. He says, but for Harris to really pull ahead in the final 14 days, He said she needs to figure out a way to make people see her more than just a continuation of the mainstream Democratic policies that Biden has put into place. Quote, I don't think we fully understand the degree to which so many Americans are really frustrated with how conditions are, and they're willing to vote for a convicted felon because she reminds them too much of the status quo. That's the problem. She had a chance to be different. She was different. She changed everything, but she started to run, and after 45 days, she became the status quo, unquote, he said. Quote, she should be differentiating herself more. Okay,
Okay.
I finished reading.
Okay. All right. Here's my problem with that whole piece is that it's crafted and it's designed to put doubt in people's minds. I'm gonna tell you something about Frank Luntz. Let's be very clear, and I can tell you everything that I heard in that. The first thing I heard was that he doesn't want to be right and he doesn't want to be wrong. So Trump can win, but she could win too. But Trump, we can't forget the fact that he might not be MAGA, he's still Republican. Okay. And that came through very clear. So even though he says he's not MAGA, it also shows that he is, and this is my problem with the media. It shows that he does want Trump to win because he pointed out every reason why Trump shouldn't win, but then was like, oh, but she should be doing this. Okay. So here's the thing. I get from him that he wants her to be a magical Negro and to, fix everything. And no, she has to fix the voters and make them do this. And she has to do this. She has to do that. But why doesn't Trump have to do this? That's what I'm saying. Why are you saying that she has to do this? Why isn't he saying, no, Trump needs to watch his mouth. Trump needs to do better. Trump needs to stop being a rude jerk. And then I definitely can tell from what he's saying that he only asks white people. Because the thing about the husbands and wives sleeping on different things because a wife is, that's not, but I know as being a black, that's not black people. More black wives and husbands are in sync. Most are in sync politically than they're not. Because here's the thing. As black women, we can't be married to someone whose politics don't protect us. Because we oftentimes have to play an equal footing in the role in the household. We also have to work. We also have to do these things, right? We don't get married to not work anymore and then have kids and just be a stay-at-home mom. So I get the feeling that he only asked white people, but I also get the feeling that the people that he's talking to in these quote-unquote focus groups were also only Republicans. And not only that, everything that he listed showed me that no matter what she did, it would never be enough for him. Because he started with, oh, well, she had this and that, and then she hasn't done this. If she was so great in the beginning, guess what? In the beginning, she didn't distance herself from Joe Biden the way that you're saying that she should be doing now that she's not doing. How she was with Joe Biden was no different at the beginning than it is now. That's the part for me that doesn't. And then what he's saying in coded language, because she's being more forceful, she's being more aggressive in getting the messaging out. She's calling balls and stripes. Joy is still there, but she's being serious. She's being dead serious right now because we're in the final stretch. What he's saying is she's turned from being this happy, joyful, like I said, the magical Negro, and now she's this angry black woman. And that's what I got from that whole article.
I was waiting for you to get there. That's exactly what that is. That whole article is an internal struggle with himself.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that this woman is strong. She's a strong black woman, but they equate that to an angry black woman.
Right.
Listen, I saw something very interesting just yesterday. It was where there was a young white reporter or whoever she was, and she was in a black barbershop. And she was asking the black men about who they support and why. And she worded the question like, can you feel like you can trust a black woman in office as a president? My man stopped cutting the hair of the person in the chair and said, Did you ask me that question? Because I'm
I got a
married.
black wife. I'm married to a black
I'm
woman.
married to a black wife. And then she had to repeat himself again. And he was like, if my wife can run my household the way that it's being run right now, I can trust a black woman to run this country.
Mm-hmm.
So all this illusion, what they're doing is they're causing division. Yes, of course. Is there a percentage of black men that don't support black women? Yes, there is. But you hear about that more than the ones that do support us.
Right.
So I thought that was very, very important for us to hear. And that was a very powerful video that more people need to see.
Yeah, I saw it. And you know, it what you said was right, because as you were speaking, I thought this. You know what, that Luntz piece, and when I, you know, I see him, and I see and I hear this thing, and I saw, like I said, I saw him on MSNBC earlier this week talking about this. And here's what I realized is that with Luntz, what you're seeing is the disintegration of a mediocre white man. And there is this black woman who's going to get to this position of power that has only been held by only one other black person, and the rest for 200 plus years have been white men. Right?
Oh, and don't forget that she's getting also the backlash of how they still.
Right. But not only that, but she has, and it's not even just her. She has gotten the ears of the population of women that they believe that they control more than any other population, and that's white women. White women are, and that's why it goes back to the whole thing about the conversation before about the oh well, it's just the focus on abortion, whatever. That's why they're mad about that, because this thing that, and it's something that it's, look, this is your fault, right? This is your fault. You're just mad now that because of something stupid that you did, you can't control white women anymore.
So, as we close down, it is Saturday before the Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
Who will win the Electoral College?
Harris.
Okay, I won't put my opinion in.
Well, here's the thing. You know what? You know, because I thought about what you have been saying. I can say this. I know where the red parts of Connecticut are. I don't see the Trump signs the way I used to. Yeah, I'll tell you one thing. There's this store. It's a gun shop, right? They used to be covered in Trump posters and flags and everything, right? I drove past them the other day. Nothing. That's it. Nothing. I think the enthusiasm for Trump is not there, because the truth of the matter is there are Republicans who are getting tired of him too. And again, it goes back to the numbers. It's a numbers game. He did not grow. He did not gain any voters. All he has are the ones that he had going into this. He didn't gain any voters, and he didn't do any outreach.
What about young men?
Huh? What?
What about young men?
He already had them.
Okay.
He already had, and let's be very clear, young white men, because guess what? Young black men, 85% to Harris. Young Latino men, 68% to Harris. And so it's young white men, but guess what? He already had them, because if we knew that she's got young black and Latino men that way, then we know what he already had with young white men. Okay. And I don't think, and again, young white men, but young people historically are undervote. They don't come out to vote like that. So the thought that would even make a difference, no. He has not grown. He has not gained any people, because guess what? If he had, don't you think that the news media would have jumped on that like a succubus? Because they love these. Remember how they did the thing with when Joe Biden's thing, because remember, Donald Trump is good. for media business. A Donald Trump presidency is good for media business. All of these people who are heads of these networks are Trump supporters. Trust me.
Okay.
If they got the indication that he had grown his base, it would have been all over the press, the same way that it was to get Biden to step down and been like, oh, Trump has grown his base, blah, 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 grown his base. But you know, the other thing that also pissed people off, Dr. Vibe, was the Washington Post refusing refusing to publish. They already decided to endorse Harris. They refused. Jeff Bezos decided, yeah, we're not going to publish that. We're just going to not endorse this time. And why? Because people saw for the fact that it was because she's a Black woman. Because guess what? They endorsed Hillary Clinton. They endorsed Barack Obama. They endorsed the Black man. They endorsed the white woman. They could not endorse the Black woman of Southeast Asian descent that has a Jewish husband. That was just too far for Jeff Bezos. But also because Jeff Bezos is a coward and he's afraid that Trump is going to come after the Washington Post if he wins. But guess what the people did? 200,000 people cut off their subscription this week. I'm sorry, the next day, actually. 200,000. And that was as of what
King was very, very, very vocal about that on Twitter. He was like, I never thought that I would do this, but I'm doing it.
Yep, they did. A lot of people did this. Not only that, but then they had reporters, editors quit.
Okay.
So all right. I really do think, I think that this is going to, and honestly, I looked at the predictions. I've seen the predictions. More than one pollster has predicted Harris will get 303 to Trump getting 238. And last time Biden got 305 to Trump 228. So I honestly think that the first person to get to 270 that wins.
Yeah. Okay. We got to cut this because we got to get rest for Tuesday. I'm gonna really quick get through the last comments. Regina says, what do we think about the LeBlanc video? I just heard about it. I know he's supporting.
It was good. It was very good. Very well done.
Because of time, we're gonna keep it short. We're gonna wrap it through the comments. Dr. Tati says this was great. Thank you. Regina says, if you are live with us right now, there's a Luther Vandross documentary on CNN. Regina says Harris will win in 45 and his cult will cause a lot of trouble. Dr. Tati says, Regina, yes. We've got Dr. Tati says, sane people see that this is a cult. People interested in the Constitution and democracy won't stand for a cult running this country. She also says that Jeff Bezos is Cuban. And Regina says it actually ended up to being 250,000 people that cut their subscription from the Washington Post. And Michelle, so true. Good night. All right, let's end it off here because these ladies need strength for Tuesday because I have a feeling it's going to be a long one on today. So, as always, we like to have them share their contact information. First off, the Lala girl, lady.
It's me. Nobody asked me how real estate is doing during this election cycle, so I just put in a link to let you know that. Because it is very interesting. It is a tie to real estate in this, but you can find me at bit.ly/Laura Key Info. I made it very easy. I have a lot of great stuff there. And I'm asking you that you're watching us on YouTube, most of you, but I am also looking for your subscriptions over there on my YouTube as well. So I look forward to seeing you over there.
100%. Aisha K.
You can find me at Aisha Staggers on Twitter and on Instagram. It's AK Staggers.
Wonderful. That is it. So me. I just put Aisha back up. No, there we go. All right. So let's finish it off right quick. If you want to get in touch with me. Okay, let's do it this way because there's too many things going on and this has gone long and we need to get rest. All right. If you want to get a hold of me, website, thedrvibeshow.com. YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn, @VIBESHOW. Instagram @thedrvibeshow.com. X at Dr. VIBESHOW. Email address Dr. VIBE at the Dr. VIBESHOW.com. Also, remember, coming up this Tuesday, live, 9 p.m., 6 p.m. Pacific, U.S. presidential election live watch party. Wherever you're watching this, that's where you need to be. All right, I'm going to end up. There's other stuff I've already put in the comment section wherever you're watching, how you can get a hold of the Primetime Saturday store, the Discord group for Primetime Saturday with Aisha and Lala, and also Girlfriends Chat. It's all in your comment section. And finally, and also how you can get in contact with me. I believe I put it in there. If not, I'm going to put it there right now. But I'm going to end it off with this. Well, first of all, thank you to everyone who watched live on the replay. Hope we see you on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday. And then we're going to finish off with this. Live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Sometimes you have to get smaller to get stronger. Block assumptions, then aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. Love, faith, and respect. And as always, just don't manage your time, manage your energy, and remember to give yourselves grace. We will see you on Tuesday. And if not, we're going to miss you, but you're going to miss us too, because we're going to rock on Tuesday. God bless. Peace, well. Keep the faith. Walk good.